All right, let's bring in Congressman Pete Aguilar of California. He is chair of the House Democratic Caucus, the party's #3 position. Thank you very much for being on this morning.
Congressman, the shootings continue, sadly, tragically, almost every day. Greg Abbott, he'll either focus focus on illegal immigrant status when they're, right after they've been slaughtered, or he'll talk about mental health. He'll do everything but do what 90% of Americans want him and other Texas governors to do.
That's absolutely true. And it's shocking, but not surprising that the governor would take those positions. House Democrats have continually advocated for sensible gun reform policies. The American public supports those. Universal background checks, making our communities safer. Those are the types of things we're going to continue to support. But it's just shocking and saddening that the governor of Texas would continue to say these things. But clearly the statistics bear this out. My heart goes out to these communities in Texas, but clearly this has to do with leadership as well, and their open carry rules absolutely play a role in this.
There was able to be some progress made a year ago at the federal level on guns. There seems to be little to no appetite this time around. The Republicans in the House aren't even willing to really talk about it. What can you right now as a lawmaker? What is your sense of? Is it just frustration? Is there what more can you do? Can you push your colleagues? Is there more the White House can be doing? What do you think?
Well, I think that there are things that we can do. We can't stop doing things. Our job is to write laws and pass legislation. And so that's what we need to do. The bipartisan gun safety legislation that passed last year was great. It was the most comprehensive that was done in 30 years. It wasn't enough. And clearly we're seeing that now, making investments in our communities, making investments in states to tighten up their red flag laws. Those are absolutely worthy investments in mental health. But can and should we do more? Absolutely. Should we look at the age at which individuals can buy firearms? Absolutely. Background checks, those types of things have stalled in the United States Senate. I don't speak Senate, but I can tell you House Democrats have continually advocated for comprehensive reform here, and we're going to continue to do that.
Congressman, in the backroom discussions, when you're away from the cameras, away from any kind of public exposure, and you're talking to members of the opposition party, is there any sense at all that there's some understanding of the human factor that we're dealing with here? We're talking about, in the last 2 weeks, kids being killed because they asked their neighbor to quit shooting because it was keeping the infant up at night, and 5 people died. Now, people in Texas, same state, being killed going shopping. I mean, is there any way, when you're away from everything else and people are not profiling for votes, that you can get through to these people and say, do you understand we're in a civilization crisis almost in this country?
It's hard. It's hard to break through that, Rev, to be honest with you. It's difficult. And, we understand that the politics are tough for them. And Republicans don't want to advance legislation that doesn't have a majority or over 200 votes of their own colleagues. And so that becomes a difficulty. But I'll tell you, each and every one of us has stories about mass shootings and gun violence in our district. Mine was 2025. I had been a legislator for 11 months in this job, and a mass shooting in San Bernardino, where I'm from. I mean, all of us are touched by this in our own communities, and it's shocking that more Republicans don't want to come to the table. But I think it also shows the kind of hollowed out moderate Republicans that don't really exist anymore.
Congressman, 2 other issues we want to cover with you: the debt ceiling, of course, and that deadline, and the border. And this news out of Texas: at least 8 people were killed and 10 others injured by a driver who plowed into a crowd of migrants in the border city of Brownsville. The group was standing at a bus stop outside a Catholic Charities Center yesterday morning. Surveillance video shows the driver of an SUV going straight into the crowd and then wrecking the vehicle. Now investigators are trying to figure out if it was intentional. They say the driver is an Hispanic male who is not cooperating and has given them several names. Right now, he's charged with reckless driving, but police say more charges are likely. Police are looking into reports from survivors who said the driver yelled anti-immigrant slurs at them while they detained him at the scene. Meanwhile, President Biden is defending his decision to send additional troops to the U.S.-Mexico border. 1,500 troops were dispatched to help with the expected influx of migrants as Title 42 expires this week. The pandemic-era policy allowed the White House to expel people from the country rapidly. In an interview with MSNBC's Stephanie Ruhle, the president said the additional troops will help speed the asylum process. He also called on Congress to pass an immigration bill.
Those 1,500 people at the border, they're not there to enforce the law. They're there to free up the border agents that need to be on the border. And we're having another 1,000 people coming in, their asylum judges, to make judgments, to move things along. I've asked this Congress for help in terms of what they need at the border. They need more agents. They need more people to clear people. They need more action to, for example, we need these farm workers. They're badly needed. There has to be a legal pathway to citizenship.
Congressman, the Title 42 expiring, what do you make? What do you think of the president's approach to what is happening at the border?
Well, House Democrats want order at the border. We want asylees treated with dignity and respect. But we also understand the importance of making investments to ensure that that happens. President Biden submitted a budget to Congress that would have done that. It would have made investments in border security. It would have increased Customs and Border Patrol officers. What we saw recently out of House Republicans is they would cut these programs. So what we need to do is offer that certainty, and we need to make sure that these asylees and this process is adjudicated and that there's fairness to it. We want to give the president the space to devise a plan that makes sense in a post-Title 42 world. But this was a public health measure, and clearly we have moved on beyond that public health measure. This is on Congress to pass comprehensive immigration reform and fix our broken immigration system. That's on us. I don't trust House Republicans to do this. Time and time again, House Democrats have done just that and have advanced policies and bills to do that.
Well, Democrats agree with Republicans that there's chaos at the border, right? I mean, and Democrats, I'm sure, are focused on the humanitarian crisis that's been at the southern border now for several years. And by the way, Congressman, I know you know this as well. It's only going to get worse if we continue to allow chaos to reign at the southern border. We're only asking more people from impoverished nations south of us to come up and try to get in the United States illegally, only to undergo their own humanitarian crisis as they, risk their lives only to be turned away.
We need an orderly process. I agree with you, Joe. That's absolutely something that we need to do. What House Democrats want to also make sure that we focus on are these root causes of migration. You know, people are fleeing in difficult and dangerous conditions. They're fleeing economic issues. They're fleeing because of climate change, and they aren't able to farm the land that they used to farm with
right,
hurricanes.
Congressman, I totally get this, but we've been saying this for 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 years. There is a massive crisis at the southern border right now. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but it's only getting worse, and it's going to continue to get worse over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years unless we do something now. So what can we do?
Yeah, well, some of the investments that the administration is planned to make, these processing centers, still need to be stood up outside of the United States so people can process for asylum, to declare asylum. Those are positive steps. People right now are able to use an app to schedule a time to meet with an asylum officer. Those are reasonable, but this is a Western Hemisphere problem. Migration, the root causes of migration, what we do with it is something that isn't just a United States issue. We need to have more countries at the table to have this conversation to make sure, whether it's Eastern Europe or whether whether it's our southern border, that people fleeing migration for a variety of reasons have an ability to declare asylum that is legal and lawful, which is currently the case now. But we need to make sure that it's done in a humane way, and that the countries, the host countries, can process those individuals. And that's what we're struggling with now.